Hi, I'm Sarah Turcotte, Area Community Liaison for Bridges by Epic. Welcome to our Bridges to Community show.
Welcome everyone. I'm Erica Lab, Executive Director of Bridges by Epic in Westford. Today we are so lucky to have a returning guest with us, Attorney at Law Shani Colleymore. Miss Colleymore received her JD from Suffolk University Law School in Boston, Massachusetts, and received her Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice from Northeastern University, also in Boston, Massachusetts. She focuses her practice on estate planning, elder law, and probate matters. She has been a wonderful resource for our Bridges families, and even personally, my own family. That's how much we trust her. So welcome back to the show, Shani. We are so happy to have you today.
Absolutely. Welcome back, Shani.
Thanks, guys. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you back. I know that we've actually had you on our show once before to talk about the importance of planning ahead. And really this last year, I think planning for the future has been more of a focus more than ever. And we're thrilled just to have you back to lend some advice to our local community, and really would love to just start by, if you don't mind sharing with our viewers, what this last year was like for you as an estate planner.
Yeah, it's been a crazy year during the pandemic, and I think for all of you at home, it's been crazy. But for us too, when the pandemic first started, we weren't allowed to meet with any clients. So for months, we weren't allowed to get any wills signed or anything like that. So it was kind of like everything really stopped in the beginning. And then the state enacted a virtual notarization law. And that allowed us to start doing Zoom meetings with clients and to be able to sign their wills and powers of attorneys virtually, as opposed to meeting in person, so we can try and keep all of our elderly clients safe, during the pandemic. So it was really crazy. So you can imagine we went from not being able to do anything, and then to being backlogged with stuff and doing everything virtually and trying to sort of adapt to, working from home and having everything being web-based, which was, it took a little getting used to in the beginning, but I think it's been really good.
Awesome. I'm sure that you are a Zoom professional after this last year. I feel like we all are.
Yeah.
Yes, totally.
We've all had to adjust. Shani, what are some of the biggest concerns that you've seen from clients that, sort of now coming back to your office and getting in touch with you? What are their biggest concerns and things that they really need assistance with?
I think the biggest concern that has top of clients' minds now with the pandemic is COVID. And, it's in the news, it's everywhere you go, it's what you talk about at work. It's so top of people's minds that people just want to make sure that they have documents in place in case they get sick and something happens to them. I think now people more than ever are thinking about their own sort of mortality and are realizing that they've put off getting a healthcare proxy for years or a power of attorney, and they don't want to do that anymore because they're just concerned about their families. And, that's the biggest thing. People just want to make sure that they've taken care of their families if something happens to them. So all the time, that's what people say. It's if something happens, I just want to make sure I've done everything I was supposed to, which is good because, these are really important things to make sure that you do for your loved ones.
Yeah, and we've all talked about this previously. It's like the gift that you give to your loved ones, and unfortunately, this year especially has brought out these urgent situations where we're scrambling to know somebody's wishes, and had to, going through devastating loss, and then on top of it having to cope with figuring out who's in charge, what to do.
And most importantly, what those wishes are. We all have wishes, and a lot of times we feel we have these conversations with our families, but unless we're meeting with professionals like yourself, Shani, a lot of those may remain wishes and not actually be carried out. So really that importance of, meeting with people and making sure that the things you're hoping to do and hoping to leave your family, it's legal and going to move forward.
Right.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. And can you just share what are some of the ways, you brought up many concerns that people have had during this pandemic. What are some of the ways that you've been helping to ease some of these concerns with the clients you're working with?
So I think the number one way is to, come in, meet with me, and come up with some type of estate plan that fits your needs. And there's, numerous types of plans. Everything that we do is custom based on the client, but everybody should consider getting a will, a durable power of attorney, a healthcare proxy, and a HIPAA authorization in place to make sure that they've sort of taken care of their family and can address all of these concerns with the pandemic and everything going on there, to make sure they have everything in writing and don't wait until the last minute. Sometimes people, like you said, they wait until their spouse is in the hospital and they then realize, they don't have a HIPAA authorization and now they can't talk to the doctor. So just doing these things now.
Yeah. And I think before we kind of get into your top 5 reasons, because I know you have really great top 5 reasons why, planning is important, can you just share with the audience, what is a healthcare proxy and why is it important? And the same for a power of attorney. What is a power of attorney and why is it important?
So a healthcare proxy is a document where you can nominate really as many people as you want. Typically, we do 3 people in a consecutive 1, 2, 3 order that can make medical decisions for you in the event that you become incapacitated. And that incapacity is determined by your doctor. And it could be a temporary capacity because maybe you're under anesthesia, but it could be because you have dementia or because you're in a coma. It could be so many things. But when the doctor determines that you're incapacitated and therefore unable to make your own medical decisions, the people that you've named in advance that you trust would make medical decisions for you. And I usually encourage people to have conversations with the people they nominate in the proxy so that they understand what your wishes would be if you were to make them yourself. So that's the healthcare proxy. So it's a really important, thing to do. And then a power of attorney is similar, except it's for financial decisions. So naming people that you trust to handle your financial affairs if you're not able to do that yourself. So like selling your house, accessing bank accounts, life insurance, retirement accounts, all like that. That person you name in your durable power of attorney with that document is able to access all of your finances. So it's very powerful.
Yeah, so in my experience, families sometimes think they have the power to do something. So they'll say, I'm my mother's responsible party. But in fact, if it's not legal, if it's not in writing using these different forms, they're not really, they don't have those legal rights.
Right.
And that's important to know that, I think, in my own experience with my own parent, I had power of attorney at one bank, but not power of attorney. And so I think, getting through that with someone like yourself is really helpful.
Yeah, because a lot of times I'll meet with clients and, I always encourage, if you're going to get anything, make sure you get a power of attorney, a healthcare proxy, and a HIPAA. Like everybody needs that, even if you don't have a penny, right? So, and I'll go over what the documents are, and then they'll say, I signed this HIPAA thing with my doctor already. And it's like, you might have signed that for that one doctor,
right?
But but not for every doctor that your mom or dad might be at.
Right, and often you're at the hospital in a 911 emergency.
Yeah, exactly. If you're somewhere else, that HIPAA you might have filled out with your PCP might not apply at the hospital. So making sure that's in place. And the same thing, like you said, with the power of attorney. People do powers of attorney at Fidelity's and, the John Hancocks of the world. But your parent can have a bank down the street at Bank of America, and they don't have a power of attorney there, so we can't access that. So just making sure that you have something that's universal in place and up to date as well. I recommend those documents to be updated at least every 10 years.
Sure. Well, and like Erica said, it truly is a gift, because the last thing you want to be doing is trying to, or figure this out, that you don't have access to, or able to make important decisions in a moment of crisis. And oftentimes, some families might think it's a hard conversation to have, but it's truly a gift to have these conversations and be able to know what it is we're trying to do or what we want to try to accomplish when the situation arises, and not while it's happening, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you don't want to have your loved one in the hospital with some sort of terminal illness, and then you're realizing, oh my goodness, I never did a healthcare proxy, and now they can't sign one. The stress of that is just, too much, I think, for people in that situation. So just to plan in advance, to give you peace of mind, to give your loved ones peace of mind, and to know that everything will work out how you wish.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's a good segue, I think, to your top reasons why people should do their estate planning.
And I got to preview these tips ahead of time, and I think that they're really great. So I'm excited for you to share. Do you want to jump into your first tip?
Sure. So my first tip on getting your estate plan done is because planning actually will give you peace of mind, which is what we sort of have been discussing. But when you do your estate plan, I think people can be so afraid to think about their own mortality and death, and it is really scary to think about, so people put off doing it, but they still have this sort of like lingering thing in the back of their head that worries them, because they know they haven't done a will, they know they don't have their power of attorney, so they know. So, I find once people sit down with me, they feel so comfortable, and it's not as burdensome as they thought to get this stuff sort of done. And at the end of the process, they just feel so relieved, and it really gives them peace of mind and their family peace of mind to know that they have taken care of their loved ones by whether it's doing a will or setting up a trust for a child with special needs, or, just doing the healthcare proxies and powers of attorney, but knowing that they're in place and that, their family will have that when it's needed makes them feel so much better.
And so much of what you do is like collect the information. So you're asking all the questions and all the right questions to get the information and then put it into legal jargon so that all they really have to do is then return to you and sign everything after you've explained it, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, right. So, I try to make it, painless as possible to sit down and meet with me. I think people are generally nervous about the idea of meeting with an attorney and that kind of thing. But I think I'm not that scary. And,
no, you're not.
Very personable, Shani.
So, But you're right. I'm asking questions. We're having a conversation about their family, their assets, what their concerns are. And then I come up with a plan that they feel comfortable with based on our conversations.
You are watching Bridges to Community.
At Bridges by Epic, we focus on helping and supporting families and people living with dementia and Alzheimer's.
We have educational programs and support groups free of charge to everyone in the community if you need support caring for a loved one at home.
We solely focus on bringing quality of life and joy, as well as support to family members. Many of our programs, which were once held in person, such as our caregiver support group and caregiver education, have all been brought to the virtual platform right here on Zoom.
We can reach you and your loved ones in your home, so you don't even have to leave the house to get support. Hopefully, you'll get a lot of support from our show, Bridges to Community. You can watch old episodes, and believe me, we're going to have more coming your way, so stay tuned.
Thank you so much for tuning into our show, and we look forward to seeing you more this year.
Thank you.
Kind of going into your second tip, and I know that you listed it here, but doing this type of planning can actually save someone some money, which who doesn't like to have a savings? I think I have my coupon
Yes.
box right in my car, so.
Exactly. Exactly. So that is my second tip, that doing planning saves you money. And it does so in several ways. The most obvious ways are that basically, when you do your will, you're letting the court and the world know who you want to inherit your money, right? And who you want to be the personal representative of your estate, the person that's going to be managing your estate and giving out the money to the people that you care about. So by putting this in writing, the court knows what you want, your loved ones know what you want, and that reduces the likelihood that there'll be fighting amongst your family over property, which reduces the need for an attorney. So that saves legal fees, delays, expenses. Like if there's any sort of like dispute over assets, that is very time consuming in a drawn out, very, very expensive process. So it's just easier to avoid all those sorts of delays and just put what you want in writing. So that's the first way you can save money by doing your estate plan. And then with the durable power of attorney and healthcare proxy, if you don't have one in place, if you wait until you're incapacitated and you haven't done a power of attorney and you haven't done a healthcare proxy, then, and you're in an emergency situation, your family's only option is to go to court and petition the court to appoint a conservator of your estate, which is sort of like a power of attorney version, the court version of a power of attorney. And then for the healthcare proxy, they would appoint a guardian of your person, and that's the person that can make medical decisions for you. But that's all through a court-appointed process, and which, nothing that happens in court is fast or cheap. So, if you're in an emergency and you need a medical decision made or you need assets transferred, you just don't want to get caught up with having to go through this process. It's already must be stressful enough for your loved ones if you're sick, and now to have to go to court, it's just unnecessary. So just a little bit of advanced planning can save all those sort of legal fees and delays for your loved ones. So that's really, really important.
Absolutely. And just to kind of chime in on that, I mean, this is something for people of all ages to consider,
Yes.
Not just our seniors. I think that this type of planning is, important for, people young like myself and Erica, even yourself.
Yes.
Thanks for calling me young.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I mean, we don't think about these things because we're, busy working and doing what we do, that you don't oftentimes think of that. But God forbid any one of us could be in a car accident or something that you don't plan for. So it's so important to have these things in place.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And actually, I try to encourage parents to make sure that their kids, once they turn 18, to get a power of attorney, healthcare proxy, HIPAA authorization in place. So because I think that, of course, an 18-year-old isn't going to think of these things, So I tell parents, your kid's going to college next year, make sure, you talk to them about getting these documents, because everybody that's 18 really needs this. And I think, and over everyone, because parents sort of forget that once their kid is 18, they think of them as the kid, but for the rest of the world, they're an adult. Mm-hmm. So you can't access their bank account without a power of attorney. You can't call or talk to their doctor anymore without a HIPAA. All of these really important things that I think parents are so used to doing, you can't do it anymore when they're 18. So it's important to even have it at that young age in place, so that there's always somebody that is there to help out when you need it.
Absolutely.
Right, and it would be activated. It's not like they lose all their privacy. It's activated when needed, so it's there as a safety net. And to your point, with the pandemic, everything's been backed up. So, if there's a bad storm, the courts get backed up, never mind COVID. So people were really left in the lurch. And so speaking of kids and assets, you hear the commercials all the time on talk radio and stuff saying, protect your assets. Mm-hmm. So if you could talk a little bit about that, planning for that, as best people can.
Yeah, so, you do hear a lot of commercials on the radio about getting trust, call us, we'll protect your money and whatever. I mean, so a lot of those things are very salesy, but the But I think the main tune is that people do want to make sure that they have protected money for their kids. And that's a big recurring theme when you meet with parents. I want to make sure that my kids are okay, or that if something happens to me, my wife is so set. Those are like big things that I think everybody really is worried about. And some ways that you can do that is by a trust. There's various different kinds of trust depending on your purpose, but if you're trying to protect your kids from debt or divorce issues in the future, one great way you can do that is to give them their inheritance in a trust, and that can protect your kids' future inheritance from any issues like that. And if you are concerned about, long-term care costs, you can also consider various types of irrevocable trusts and gifting strategies to deal with protecting those type of assets. But a lot of times, some of the things that you hear on the radio are a little bit misleading.
Yeah.
So it's always really important to, I think, generally ignore them and contact a professional that's experienced in, elder law or estate planning, and, to deal with whatever your sort of issues are, and not to just, call that person on the radio.
That's great advice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just kind of so I don't, let the audience lose out on any chance of savings, but I think you also mentioned that planning ahead of time can also help with your real estate taxes. Is that true too?
So, yeah. So another thing that you can plan for is when somebody dies, depending on what the estate is worth, you have to pay what's called estate taxes. So that can be to the federal government or to the state government of Massachusetts, depending on the level of your estate worth. So by just doing a little bit of advanced planning, you can reduce the amount of taxes that you might owe by either starting a gifting strategy that you develop with your attorney, or by creating the various types of tax trusts that you can fund now, and that would take effect upon your death. To reduce any future estate taxes, which is just more money into your family's pocket, and less money that, none of us want to pay taxes needlessly. So with a little bit of planning, if you can save money, and there's more money in your family's pocket, I think that's always a good thing. So that's another really important reason to do planning.
Awesome. Thank you.
And for those in the audience, and for Sarah and I, the nominating guardians for minor children, can you talk a little bit about that? Yes.
So, I think another really important thing with the pandemic that people have really started to think about is God forbid something happens to you and you have young children, you want to make sure that you have named the person that you trust to take care of your kids, maybe somebody with similar values as you, but putting that in writing so that the court knows that you wanted whether it's your best friend or your sister or your mother, whoever, this is the person that you trust to raise your kids if something happens to you. Because it's not always obvious who that is. And without that document, then your family and the court is just sort of guessing at what you would have wanted. And they don't know you. So without something in writing, how do they know what you would want, right? So that's one. And then at the same time, naming somebody to manage your kids' inheritance. So usually I recommend some type of trust for minor children. So having a trustee that's somebody that's really good with money that would manage any inheritance until the kids were old enough. Usually we say 25 or something. And those can be the same person, but it could also be a different person. So one person managing their money and one person sort of raising them, which can offer lots of benefits. One is that, obviously raising a family is a lot of work, and being a trustee is a lot of work. So kind of split the burden of that. But also, you don't have one person with too much power either, so it can protect your kids from that perspective. So you have a little bit of checks and balances. So that's really good. as well. And very important to just make sure that your kids are, cared for.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
really, really great and important advice. And just kind of getting back to what you had mentioned earlier in regards to, I lost my train of thought.
You can do it. It's in there.
This is totally going to be a cutout scene, you guys.
Estate taxes, beneficiary money,
Avoiding probate.
No. No, I totally had a blank moment, so I do
It's okay.
apologize. It did have to do with the children aspect, but I totally forgot. But that's okay. So reset. So honestly, Shani, these have been really, really great tips, and I appreciate it. I appreciate this conversation. I think that it's we talk about it a lot of times because we are in senior care, and a lot of times we are talking with families who have these in place, and these documents in place, and we also work with families who don't, and we can see the value of having a plan like this. And I just thought of my question. So you did mention earlier the importance of working with an attorney who specializes in elder law or estate planning. And I would just love to quickly share with the audience why it's important to work with someone who this is their focus and this is what they specialize in. Because I do think that there's a big difference when it comes to this type of planning and the attorney that you're working with.
Yeah. So, if you're 60 plus, and you should talk to an elder law attorney, especially if you're concerned about, long-term care planning. And sometimes people don't even realize that that's a concern until they meet with us. But elder law, estate planning, special needs trust, all this stuff, it's a specialty. So if you have an attorney that doesn't just focus on this all the time, you're not going to be getting the best advice and the best plan. And especially with, elder law, like with everything, it's always evolving. And so it's ever changing with Medicaid and how different ways to protect assets. Month to month, we come up with new strategies. And so if you're not really in it, you're not going to be getting the best advice. And even something as simple as a power of attorney, you think that you can just go to your friend that does family law or whatever, and, or general practice, and they can draft you a power of attorney. But sometimes I come in and, I review the powers of attorney and it's like 2 pages long. And, if you're a layperson, you think, oh, well, that's great. It's, whatever. It says that John can do anything I want. But in Massachusetts, if your power of attorney doesn't list every specific power that you want your agent to be able to do, they can't do it. And, if you're trying to bring that to Fidelity to change a beneficiary, and their legal team is going to review that power of attorney and see if it says, oh, John can change beneficiaries. And if it doesn't say that, they're going to say, sorry, John, you can't do that. So it seems like such a small little thing, but it's really a big deal. And then if that's the power of attorney they got 10 years ago, and now dad has Alzheimer's and can't sign another one, it's like you're stuck. Or, lots of times I meet with families who've done trust with other attorneys, and then I review the trust and I tell them, this doesn't protect your assets from nursing home costs. And they're like, but that's what I told them I wanted. And it's like, I know, but it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it really is a specialty. And I just, I always hate to see it when people are, because estate planning can be expensive, right? So it's like you don't want to pay for one thing and then have to redo it the next year with another attorney because you went to, the wrong person. So I think it's important to make sure you get a referral. A good resource is the Massachusetts chapter of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. It's massnala.com. They have referrals for elder law attorneys and other attorneys. They're a great resource, so you can check there. Bar organizations also have referral sources, but that can be a mixed bag because you don't really know what their experience level is. But
And Shani Ray Colleymore, you are a great resource for us and our viewers.
Right here in Westford, too. If you want to reach out to Shani, you can reach her right over at Madge and Johnson right here in Westford. And Shani, we cannot thank you enough. This has been really great advice. We thank you for coming back and educating our viewers, and thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone, for coming.
You guys.
Appreciate it. See you next time.
Bye.